Welcome back to the SoulCanvas Podcast. My name is Jenifer Madson. I'm your host. And if you've been with me in other episodes, then the first thing you're probably going to notice is that we moved. I don't mean we moved buildings, but I moved. I moved from a very stationary place over there, my work area, over here to my creative space where I create art. The reason I moved, and what you're going to see in the podcast in this coming season, is that we're going to be spending a whole lot more time on helping people in transition figure out what to focus on now, how to build a vision around that focus, and then what next? Like, what's the next right, meaning, inspired, if imperfect step to take in the direction of those dreams? This art business didn't start out as a dream for me. It was a mental health move during COVID that I started painting and found a love for it that drove me to learn more about how to do it. And that conversation will come into this next season a lot more, as well as the ongoing coaching conversation that I always have with you about finding your vision, aligning the resources and people and skills to support it, and then taking those actions to bring it to life. My guests in this season are going to be people from all walks of life that are experts in different areas of transition, whether it's romance, finance, career, big ideas, getting on a TED Talk stage, whatever the thing is that you're at that crossroads with, that you want to take a next step with. I'm going to make sure that you have the tools and the strategies and tips to do that. So while I'm with you today in this episode, I want to talk about that crossroads moment. The crossroads moment can feel very chaotic. When we move from one big thing into Lord knows what's next, because we like certainty so much as human beings, it can feel very discombobulating, very off-putting, very, as I say in my mastermind groups, wobbly. We're not always so great with wobbly. And I would tell you that one great skill to learn is physically to make yourself wobbly so that it's okay. So you tell your brain you don't have to stay in one spot in order to be safe. As a matter of fact, if we're too locked down and something comes along, we can fall a lot harder than if we're flexible, literally, physically more flexible. It's why I continue to dance. It's why I love yoga. It's why I love sometimes just somatically shaking things off, because I need to tell that little part of my brain back there that everything's cool. We got this. Wobbly is okay. So back to the chaos that comes with these transitions. You're an empty nester, or as I just had a conversation with a friend over breakfast, menopause and going into that next phase of life as a woman. Whatever the thing is, it can be really hard to understand and feel clear about what to do next. And I will tell you that the first thing to know is that you don't need to focus on what to do next. I would invite you to first take a more holistic look at your life. If you go to my website, you will see a 3-video free series, the first of which is the Wheel of Life exercise. It's a fantastic exercise, and I walk you through some special things to do with it that, again, gives you that overall look at like what's happening around the wheel for the categories that make the most difference to me, that matter the most. By looking at that, gauging that, getting a bead on that, if you will, I get a chance to really check in with what's working and why, what's not bringing me a very strong level of satisfaction and why, and then make some choices from there about what to focus on first. I've worked with so many clients in this area over the 20 years or so I've had my coaching business. And many of them say, I thought I came in to focus on my next career, but found that what I needed to focus on first was relationships, just based on the information that came from doing that Wheel of Life exercise. So I would really encourage you to go to soulcanvascoaching.com, put in your first name, email to get into that 3-video series so that you can do that Wheel of Life exercise and get a look at what's happening. There's a great relief from seeing things visually. It's probably the reason why art really saved my life when I was in such a bad place during COVID. You may have heard me talk about this before, and I'll tell the quicker version of the story today. When COVID came along, as what happened for so many people, is that my life got turned upside down in terms of the certainty I had with my executive coaching business and the income that was coming from that and all the plans that I had based on that. All of that got turned on its head. Like I said, as so many things did for so many people. And for the first time in my life, I found myself really struggling with anxiety. I'd certainly felt anxiety before, but I had never struggled with it like I was during COVID. And in that struggle, I, as a human, even though I've been coaching for a long time, sometimes that would take over. Like the sensation of it would take over. And this one particular day, that anxiety was about to have the last word on how felt like I was going to feel forever. But this still small voice said, don't worry, go paint, go do something. I've been hauling art supplies around for years, always telling myself that I didn't really know what I was doing with it. Like I didn't really know how to draw. I didn't really know how to paint. I wasn't really an artist, but I still had these supplies in the other room. And so that day, when I was at my absolute last nerve, I went in the other room. I pulled out a box of pastels that my mother had given me some years ago that I'd never touched until that day, opened the box, Pandora's box of pastels, put them on paper, and got everything I needed. I got the vibrancy, the change of mood, the color, the newness that I really, everything needed in that moment. Now, that took me straight down a rabbit hole of like pastels and what are pastels and how do you work with them? And from there, I started studying with different teachers online and going to different workshops. And I found myself in the south of France studying with a master pastelist, Richard McKinley. And then just kept on from there, kept learning online, kept learning in person, and kept not confronting so much as facing these limiting beliefs that I had about whether or not I could actually paint or draw. What it taught me, and still teaches me, is that when those limiting beliefs around something like my art, which is so new, when they arise, I need to, rather than let them have the last word, they don't get to have the last word unless or until I am willing to dive in and say, okay, what am I really telling myself here? It's not enough to simply say, I can't draw, because anybody can. You put something in, a drawing utensil in somebody's hand, put that on a piece of something, and look, I just drew something. If I dive deeper into it and discover that I really want to be able to draw dogs realistically, and I don't know how to do that, the next question becomes, do I want to learn? Because there's a learning process. So many people go around life thinking that the people who are great at things were just born that way. You're just born an artist. You're just born a dancer. You're born a musician. As opposed to drawn, pun intended, to those things because they are the expression of your genius that makes the most sense to you, that calls to you the loudest. And it's not simply visual arts or musical or dance or those sorts of things that are artistic. There are lots of ways to be expressive, cooking, gardening, home decor, writing, right? But to simply stop myself from the beauty of that by saying, I can't, and therefore, an untested I can't, and therefore, closes me off from so much wonder and expansion and delight. And so thankfully, the bigger word that day of my highest anxiety was go paint, go art something. And from there, I dove in. And now I'm in a place where not only do I have my coaching business, I also have my art practice that takes me around the world to capture the wonder and the beauty and the forms and the nature of nature, the nature of the landscape that I'm in some way or another. I no longer say, I can't do that. Now I say, is it something I want to learn to do? Maybe it calls to me, maybe it doesn't. So as you look into, if you're listening to the podcast today, if you're in some sort of transition in your life, ask yourself first, what's happening with my whole life? Health, finance, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically. What's happening in those areas? Take a look at that. And then look at what's working really well, so we can do more of that. What's working the least? And how do we pull that up so it doesn't drag things down? And then how do you create a vision? And as we go forward in the podcast, I'll say more about vision. If you go sign up for the 3 videos, you will get Wheel of Life, Vision, and then Map. So you can definitely get to that sooner. My conversations going forward, though, are always going to have to do with, what do you need to focus on first? What's the vision for that area? And how do we make it come true? All right? Because I believe all things are possible. All things are possible. We just don't need to try and go do all the things. What are the things that are most meaningful to you? And how do you want them to show up in your life? As always, I'm so glad that you're here. And like I said, I will be on the move. Sometimes we will do the podcast from my studio, sometimes from outside. Sometimes I'll be back over there in front of the computer, perhaps. But always, I want to bring you information that will further your life, further your level of satisfaction and impact, joy, delight. And I'd love to hear back from you as to whether or not this is doing that. All right. So get on over to SoulCanvasCoaching.com, sign up for the 3 video series. You'll hear more about more classes that I'll be teaching, retreats that I'll be leading on how to focus first, build your vision, focus next. All right. I'll see you again very soon. Thanks for being with me again.